Assalamualaikum and hi. For today, our group will present about the topic of Murabahah. So, what is Murabahah? Murabahah in literally meaning is derived from the Arabic word which is rib, that means increase in capital or profit of trading. Then, in technically meaning means sale in which the markup is disclosed to the purchaser as per the seller's purchase price for a trust sale for a certain specific. And Murabahah is a type of contract, a form of sale where the seller expressly mentions the cost of the sold commodity he has incurred and sells it to the another person, which is the buyer, by adding some profit or markup thereon. And the last one, Murabahah financing is similar to a rent-to-own arrangement in the non-Muslim world. The purchaser does not become the true owner until the loan is fully paid.
There are two types of Murabahah contract, which is ordinary Murabahah sale and Murabahah based on order and promises. The first one is ordinary Murabahah sale. It is a Murabahah that involves only two people, which is a buyer and a seller, with the buyer being a merchant by profession without receiving any requests or orders from consumer. The merchant acquires goods for his own inventory or account and then offers them for sale through Murabahah on a cost plus basis. The two parties agree on the profit amount or percentage, and the merchant must disclose the buyer's true cost. Next is Murabahah based on order and promise. Currently, this kind of Murabahah is widely employed since Islamic banks all over the world use it as one of their financing instruments. Murabahah to the buy orderer is the institution sales of an item to a customer, which is the purchase order for a pre-agreed selling price that includes a pre-agreed profit markup above its cost price. This has been indicated in the customer's pledge to purchase. In a Murabahah to purchase orderly transactions, the institutions often extends a Murabahah credit line to the client. It was divided into two, which is Murabahah sales to the purchase order with an obligations and Murabahah sales to the purchase order without an obligations. Murabahah sales to the purchase order with an obligations is happen if the buyer agrees to the order's request. In this kind of Murabahah transactions, he should buy the asset and reach an agreement on a legal sales with the asset's vendor. The legally binding agreement between the orderee and the purchaser is thought to have been executed with this purchase. By virtue of the legally enforceable mutual promise, the purchaser offers the assets to the orderer, who should accept it and should then create a sale contract. It is acceptable in this kind of sales to make an advance payment known as Hamish Jidiyah at the time of signing the original contract, but before the buyer really buys the item. Second is Murabahah to the purchase order without an obligations. In this kind of Murabahah, one of the party, which is the purchase order, asks the other purchaser to buy an asset and makes a commitment that when the latter does so, he would buy it from the order at a price that includes a markup profit thereon. This is a request, not an offer. It is regarded as a willingness to buy. If the buyer agrees to this request, he then buys the asset for himself in accordance with a legal sale agreement between him and the vendor of the item. When this occurs, the buyer must represent the item to the orderer in accordance with the terms of the original mutual promise after acquiring legal ownership of it. This is regarded as a buying offer from the buyer.
So for evidence, Al-Murabahah is a legitimate contract in Islam. Majority of fuqaha comprising the Sahabah, the Tabi'i and Imam of the Mazhab consider Al-Murabahah as a permissible contract based on rukhsah principle. According to the hadith, some scholars made Murabahah analogous to a form of sale called Tawliyah, means sale at a purchase price without making profit. It was reported that when Prophet ﷺ was preparing for hijrah to Madinah, and then Abu Bakar bought 2 camels for the journey, then the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Bakar, "Sell to me at cost price without profit one of them." Then Abu Bakar said, "I will not take it for nothing." In the Al-Quran, there is a verse that speaks about Murabahah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wa Allahu al-bay'a wa harrama al-riba, means that Allah has permitted trading and forbidden riba in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 275. So another one verse as in the Quran is Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya ayyuhalladzina amanu la ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bilbatili illa an takuna tijaratan antaradim minkum. Means that you who believe do not consume one another's wealth unjustly too, but only in lawful business by mutual consents. In Surah An-Nisa, verse 29. So there are available opinion from the scholars. So the first one is the Maliki school of thought. Except expenditure that are immediately tied to the sale and buy transaction as well as charge, they are not directly related to the transaction but add value to the commodities. The second one is a scholar of the Shafi'i school, accept fee that are typically incurred in the sale and buy transaction with the exceptions of labor expenditure which are included in the profit. And then the third one is the Hanafi school of thinking, permits for the charging of fees that normally arise in a sale and buy transaction but not for expenditures that should be borne by the seller. And then the fourth one is according to the Hanbali school of thinking, all direct or indirect expenses can be applied to be selling price as long as the charge must be paid to the third parties and raise the value of the commodities sold. There are 5 pillars in Murabahah, which is the seller, the buyer, merchandise or goods, and then the price. And the 5th one is the sigah, that offer, and the acceptance, which is ijab and kabul. So let's go for the first one is the seller, which is a buy. Seller is a person who exchange their product for money in exchange for the payment from the buyer. In this case, seller is a bank. And then the second one is buyer, which is mushtari. Buyer is a person who pays for a service or goods that they intend to use for themselves or reseller once they have received the product or service. In Murabahah, buyer are customer who apply the financing to a bank. And then the third one is merchandise or good, which is mabi. Okay, mabi is refer to goods or service that are in the process of being sold and the open market system. The owner must be own the goods. It must be follow some conditions and based on the Islamic law. And then the fourth one is the price, which is saman. Saman is the amount of money that required as a proof of payment to the seller. In Murabahah, the price in the sum as a financial products. And then the last one is the sigar, that offer, which is ijab, and the acceptance, kabul, which is ijab and kabul. It includes the specifications of the item requested by the buyer, the willingness of the seller to obtain the goods, and the purchase price, and the amount of profit offered to the customer or buyer. It must have an offer and an acceptance between both parties.
Next is modus operandi of Murabahah contract. Firstly is bank appoints customer as its agents and the customer purchase an order from the supplier. Then, after settle the purchase price, the supplier send the goods to the customer. The goods was sold on deferred payment basis. Lastly is settles the bank selling price on the installment basis. Next is the applications of contract. As the seller, an Islamic financial institutions transfer ownership of its assets to the buyer. The assets purchase price and profit margins are included in its selling price. In exchange, the buyer will pay the purchase price in cash or over time via installments. In Murabahah, the financier sells the assets to the buyer for a bigger sums than what was originally agreed upon, such as cost and profit. Both parties will be spared from engaging in a riba transactions, which is present in conventional loans. Islamic financial institutions frequently provide an alternative to the initial Murabahah contract.
So first, Murabahah lil amil bi shira is a sale transaction where a customer goes to the bank to buy a commodity with the specific requirements and its promises to buy the commodity is Murabahah. That is according to the basic price purchase plus the level of profits agreed upon by the both parties. And the customer will be paid in installments in accordance with financial capability. So Murabahah lil amil bi assurance is a term for a request to purchase a good under specific condition for the party, clients, and the thereafter accepted by the bank. Next is letter of credit. Letter of credit is the significance of a creditor is a credit of a financial bank is one of the legal safeguards for the bank's security in reducing risk, which is to ensure that there is a certainty that the debtor's customer will repay the loans. Before granting credits to debtor's customer, the bank evaluates the collateral and pay attention to the prudential principle in order to acquire their confidence. A guarantee or other form of collateral must be provided in order to submit financial Shariah bank that employ to Murabahah plan. So the last one is Murabahah commodities. Murabahah commodity is commodity if there are 3 or more parties involved. A Murabahah is typically a buy and a selling agreement based on the tawar concept. Commodities also has a trade base primarily from products and raw materials and minerals, while Murabahah is common sort of transaction that Islamic financial institution commonly known as a markup price. The commodity will subsequently be resolved the trade for the Murabahah that the seller and buyer have agreed upon, along with the other commodities like the third parties, with the intention of generating cash.
Now we are going to talk about issue relating to Murabahah. Buy-in, commonly known as buyback, is a double sale by which the borrower and the lender sell and then resell an object between them on first cash and again for a higher price on credit, with the net result of a loan with interest. As such, it is legal device to circumvent the prohibition of riba and therefore prohibited. Although banking authorities in Malaysia consider it acceptable, the mainstream Shariah expert from the Middle East and the rest of the world consider it non-permissible. Therefore, Islamic banks, while conducting Murabahah to purchase order, have to be vigilant that the goods being required by the client are not already owned by him. Next is rebates on early payments. Depending upon the cash flow, some clients may wish to pay earlier than the due date and demand a prepayment rebates, as in the case of conventional banking. However, the majority of contemporary Shariah scholars do not allow remission for early payment in Murabahah operation by banks. Therefore, if the customer makes early payment and there is no commitment from the bank in respect of any discount in the price of Murabahah, the bank has discretion in allowing the rebate or not, but it should not be made practice, and any such case should be decided on merit in consultation with the Shariah advisor. Lastly is rollover in Murabahah. Rollover in Murabahah means booking another Murabahah against reservoir of any previous Murabahah payment in respect of which has not been made by the client. Further markup is added to the receivable in default by a client. This is explicit riba, as the bank is not entitled to any amount over and above the debt created in the Murabahah transaction. As a result, which ownership of the sold good has already been transferred to the client. Now, the bank has no right repricing. Rescheduling is allowed. The bank, as its discretion, can reschedule the payment without any increase in the original receivables. Any amount taken by the client on account of late payment as per his undertaking in Murabahah agreement would go to the charity account. However, there is possibility of fresh Murabahah facility through the sale of new goods. As for the conclusions, Murabahah is not a mode of financing in this origin. It is a simple sales on cost plus basis. However, after adding the concept of deferred payment, it has been devised to be used as mode of financing only in case where the client intends to purchase a commodity Therefore, it should neither be taken as an ideal Islamic mode of financing nor a universal instrument for all sorts of financing. It should be taken as a transitory step toward the ideal Islamic system of financing based on musyarakah or mudarabah. Otherwise, its use should be restricted to areas where musyarakah and mudarabah cannot work.